We'll allow our attendees to keep coming in and we'll get underway. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our Winter Community Forum. I'm Jeffrey Pickett. I'm the Community Outreach Strategist. We're joined here by the LPS leadership team, and I'll be turning it over to Superintendent Boyd and the leadership team momentarily. Before we do, just want to go over a few housekeeping items. First is that this session is being recorded. We will be sharing this video with our families, as well as the PowerPoint presentation that you will be viewing during this presentation as well. Both the video and the PowerPoint presentation will be posted on our district website under the district news section and will be emailed to you through our email system, which you receive our notifications from. We'll be doing that later this week. If you have questions during this forum, please feel free to enter the questions in the chat box or the Q&A feature. We'll be going through questions at the chat and the Q&A at the end of this session, and we'll be looking forward to hearing from you the information that you want to know. Finally, I just want to turn things back over to Vanak again, and he's going to introduce you to Kim, who will be doing our interpretation for American Sign Language this evening. So Vanak?
This evening we'll be joined by Kim, who is our ASL interpreter. If you want to focus on Kim's video, please hover your mouse or click onto Kim's video, then see the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner of Kim's video, click it, and then you can press pin video. When Kim's video is pinned, you will be able to focus on her for the rest of the presentation.
All right, thank you, Vanak. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Joel Boyd.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It's great to be with everyone this evening. Thank you for joining us. Each season and each change of season, we like to do these forums to connect with you as families. We know a lot of the information you receive comes directly from your school, but we think it's also important to connect as a school district community. Last year, for those of you that joined us for our winter forums, you may remember we were talking at that time about strategic planning. We were able to engage in person at that time. This session obviously is being held virtually, so the format's going to be more similar to what you may recall from the fall sessions when we were talking about school reopening. Here we put together the areas that seem to be of pressing interest for the community based on feedback from families, from teachers, and also our students that are areas of interest for our entire school community. So we're going to share with you some updates and then look forward to question and answer at the end of at the conclusion of the slide deck. But before I get started, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you to every family member who's joining for all of your patience and flexibility during what has been an extended, difficult time through this health crisis. I hope today finds you and your loved ones safe and well, and I hope you found a way within all of the safety guidelines to enjoy your holiday season. I also want to say thank you to all of our staff members. I really believe that our students here in Lowell are going to be better off from having experienced this health crisis here in Lowell than if they experienced it anywhere else. Because of the hard work of our teachers, our school staff, and that partnership between you at home and our schools to make what is certainly less than ideal circumstance of remote learning work as best as it possibly can. So thank you to all of our staff members, and thank you to you as families. So there's some areas that we're going to touch on here today by way of update, those areas that we received feedback and questions from community members, but certainly if there's other areas and other topics that you want us to touch on into the future, please put that into the chat box as well as you see the presentation go forward. But Jeffrey, next slide. But today we're going to touch on the current status of COVID-19 here in Lowell, what that data is currently telling us, and what it looks like in terms of a return to in-person learning. We know that all our students, our staff, you as families really looking forward to a return to in-person learning. We're committed to doing that as soon as it's safe to do so. And Dr. Hall will provide you with an update there. Then being we're still in remote learning now and will be going into at least till February 1, as you'll hear from Dr. Hall, Ms. Desmond will share with you an update and access to links for additional resources around remote learning so that we can make sure we can continue to support one another through this remote environment. And then some updates, obviously the standardized testing that starts to come forward in the spring is going to be a little bit different this year. And Dr. Guillory will share with you that update. And then Ms. Phillips, our Chief Engagement Officer, will share with you a series of additional resources that are available to support you and your family during this difficult time and through remote learning. So with that, Dr. Hall, if you can share an update for all the families on the status of COVID-19 here in Lowell, as well as what it looks like in terms of returning to in-person learning, and also an update on what we're understanding to be the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. Dr. Hall?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Boyd. Thanks for joining us, everyone. As you can see on this slide, presently, we're at 78.8 for average daily incident rate per 100,000 and 10.15% positivity rate. And then you can see if you go up a few rows, we're on a 3-week downward trend with the next set of numbers coming out on Thursday. So these are some of the numbers that the school committee is going to be looking at and making decisions to bring more students back to in-person learning. Next slide, please. One of the things that the school committee instructed us to look at was to try to bring more testing to schools to help bring more students back. We've done some collaboration with the city and looking at bringing in the Abbott Binax Now antigen test. However, that's more geared towards when you have large numbers of students in school. But recently, the state just sponsored pool testing, which came out last week, and we've applied for it. But that would involve taking 10 to 12 students or staff members and pooling them or testing their samples all together. And if not one sample came up positive, then they would all be cleared. However, if one person in the pool was positive, all would be quarantined until they were individually tested. This manner of testing allows a larger number of people to be tested, and results come back within 24 to 48 hours. So we hope to hear more guidance from the state on this quickly, but it's coming out on February 1st, and we'll update you as soon as more information comes. But my understanding is that there would be a parental permission form to be involved in this, which we would send out to you once we had more information on it. Next slide, please. Recently, the safety offices under Ms. Bastida's worked to put together a dashboard that families can go to and link to get up-to-date information on what's going on with COVID-19 and resources and where to report things. Here is the link if you wish to check that out. There's all sorts of helpful information there, which is updated on a weekly basis. Next slide, please. So in late December, the Lowell School Committee held a joint meeting with the Board of Health. And in that meeting, the Lowell School Committee voted to look at a number of factors in deciding when to bring certain amounts of students back to in-person learning. And what they said is they had 3 target goal dates, which they were going to aim for, but would continue to meet with the Board of Health. So the next Board of Health meeting is January 25th with the Lowell School Committee. But presently, the goal is to bring the substantially separate special education programs back on February 1st, then return to the initial 25% of students who are in school at the beginning of the school year on March 1st, and then expand up beyond that on April 1st. It does appear we're on target for those dates because we have had 3 weeks of downward trending data. However, there will be a review of this and a number of other factors such as PPE availability, testing, and other resources we have available to make in-person learning as safe as possible so the school committee can make decisions on these dates. Next slide, please. So as you can see, the state of Massachusetts has 3 groups for vaccination. And what you should know is we don't have any control over the vaccinations. It's all done by the Commonwealth, and we won't be doing any vaccinating in the school department. It will all be done by health agents or doctors, or as determined by the state. But presently, first responders, hospital workers, and those in correctional facilities are being vaccinated now. In early February through April, those with underlying health problems and those over 65 and teachers will receive the vaccine. And then phase 3 is for everyone else, which will be start in the beginning of April. Presently, they don't have a vaccine approved for those under 16 from what I've read. However, once that happens, we'll immediately notify you of any further information. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to our Chief Academic Officer, Robin Desmond.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Welcome tonight. Thank you for joining us. Our first slide from the Office of Teaching and Learning just overviews some of the supports that we've been able to provide for remote learning since the start of the school year, which was mid-September. We've provided over 15,000 devices to students, pre-K to 12. We've provided 1,500 hotspots to families who may have had interrupted service or service that was not consistent. We've been able to close 8,000 work orders involving technology for families and students since the start of the school year. And we've also offered drop-in services through a tech tent service that rotates around the city to different schools each day at various times. We try to offer morning slots, afternoon slots, and late afternoon slots to try to meet the needs of our families. If you are struggling with technology issues, you can go to our tech tent website, which I will show you where that link is on the next slide. And you can either call our help desk, you can go to a tech tent without an appointment, or you can email the help desk through your student's email address. We will continue, even if there is a full return to school in the future, we will continue to support the infrastructures to provide one-to-one devices for all of our students moving forward through a comprehensive digital learning plan that's being built right now. So those are the updates around resources and supports. This slide provides families with some of the technology resources that the Office of Teaching and Learning supplies. And if this particular slide deck will be made available on our website and through our social media after this session is over, and you'll be able to go to this slide deck and actually click on any of these active links to be able to go through some of the resources that we're providing tonight. But right now, Jeffrey's going to click on the family resource link from this slide deck and just show an example of what we provide families. This family resource page is full of videos that we've created out of the Office of Teaching and Learning that demonstrates how you do things with, for example, your Chromebook, how you improve the audio, how you navigate the desktop. There's also videos around how to do that with MacBooks, which is what we provided to our younger learners. And then there's application videos, so how to navigate Clever, how to utilize Seesaw and Google Classroom. So this is a great resource if you're sort of struggling with any of those applications or pieces of hardware. If you go back to the slide that we were just looking at, you'll also see there's a link to technology resources, and then down below, there's information about our tech tent. This technology resources page has some more tutorials, and then it also provides some tips and tricks for families. So again, this is a great resource after this presentation to go and look through to see if if anything can help support you more at home. The Tech Tent resource provides an up-to-date weekly schedule of where our tech tent is going to be located each day, and then the time. And then you'll see right at the bottom the help desk phone number, and then also the email. Again, the email, you would have to use the student email to get to. So if you do not have access to your child's email, then or your child is not able to email the help desk themselves, then please feel free to call the help desk line. Someone answers it or returns a message after hours the next day. The next slide on the deck is resources for ELA and literacy. Again, all of those colored bullets in blue are links to resources. So the Family Resource K-8 provides you with ways that you can support your child with literacy at home. And then the two bottom links are curriculum maps so that you can see the progression of the standards across the entire year and what units of study are coming up. The next slide deck provides resources for English as a second language resources, and then also math resources. And again, in the math resource area, there's the curriculum map, but then there's also supports for the Eureka math lessons that are taught each day, and then also some other resources for some games and some reinforcement activities for students. The same goes for our science link. Again, resources for families, and then also some fun activities for students. So again, these resources will be available after this presentation, and hopefully you have an opportunity to take advantage of some of the resources on the slide deck. And then the next slide is our social studies resources. Here there's some videos. There's also a lot of fun games that you could play with your child, or your child could explore on their own, some tours and some museum archives. This slide outlines the SEL curriculum at each grade level. So our K-5 curriculum is Open Circle or Second Step. Different schools have chosen between those two. They're very similar programs. And then in our middle schools, grades 5 to 8, Second Step is being used at all of our middle schools, the online activities, and then also the restorative justice protocols. And then at our high school, we continue those protocols. At the very bottom of the slide is a link for parent resources for social emotional learning. And this final slide just lists all of the sites across the city that have after-school programming. We still have 21st century sites. And if you look at the link that says 21st Century Enrichment Programs to the right, that link will provide you with what activities are happening at each school site, the contact of the site manager at the school site. And if your child goes to one of the 21st century schools and you're interested in them participating in any of those activities, we would highly encourage you to email the school site manager to enroll your child in the programming. And now I'm going to pass the conversation over to Dr. Guillory, who will talk about attendance guidelines and standardized assessments.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. Our guidelines for attendance and remote learning we want to focus on the 3 C's: communicate, communicate, communicate. And the big idea here is that we want families to reach out to their teachers, to their school leaders, if they are having difficulties or experiencing challenges in any way, we want to make sure that we're supporting our students in your homes as much as we can to make sure that they are continuing to engage and participate in the learning. Our current policy is for students to have regular attendance and attend remote learning classes each and every day, and making sure that they're getting to all of their classes. We recognize that this is a challenge for all, and we want to again make sure that we're being as supportive as possible. Remote learning attendance will be determined by each student's engagement in the virtual sessions, the live lessons, the completion of assignments. And so students' time on task will be monitored and recorded by the teachers. We also have some tips or suggestions for helping kids be successful, families be successful in the remote learning environment. And we have also included the report card and progress report dates here in the red box for you. Next slide. For the status of our standardized assessments, we want to make sure that we share with you the latest and greatest from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The MCAS assessment, those of you that have students in grades 3 through 12, you'll be familiar with this. DESE recently shared for grades 3 through 8 that they are looking to host MCAS exams during the spring semester at some point. We don't have any more specifics on that as of right now, except that the testing times will be shortened and they will use sort of a sampling to get some diagnostic information to see how students are doing, how well they're actually grasping standards during this portion. And this information will again be helpful to teachers and families as we continue planning for the future. On the high school side, the focus is on the seniors, making sure that they have the assessments that they need to actually graduate. So the biology exam is going to be offered later in the, possibly later in the spring. We typically administer the biology exam after grade 10. Many other districts do it in grade 9, but we focus on it in grade 10. The makeup window that was originally scheduled for January 14th for our grade 12 students has been postponed. DESE is allowing the competency determination, which is a process by which if a graduating student passes a class, they can use the pass score from that class if there's an MCAS assessment that goes along with that for math and ELA. And then seniors, again, who want to take the MCAS assessments later in the year, if there are families or students that are interested in that, DESE is looking to make some testing available later in the year for those families. For the access exam, that's a test for our language learners, grades K through 12. The testing window is January 7th through May 20th. And again, this is another one of those in-person tests. And so schools are certainly building out assessment schedules and will be communicating directly with families about the opportunities to bring students in short pockets to actually take the exam. So the access exam assesses 4 language domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And again, the biology exam, I saw a question pop up about that. We do biology here in Lowell for grade 10 students. Next slide. For our AP exams, the information is certainly posted on the AP websites. Lowell High has created an online AP registration process that they will open on January 22nd and run through March 15th. Eligible students will continue to have the reduction rate for the fee taken care of. So counselors will be able to support students that need that assistance in going through that process. And LHS also surveyed their students, and 75% of the students have indicated that they do want to take their AP exams. And similarly for the SAT, the October and November exams were canceled due to COVID. And the plan is to offer the assessments. SAT presently is looking towards May and June for sessions. And so again, students sign up directly for the exams on the SAT website. And the question again about how will my child participate? Right now, the exams are slated for in-person administrations, and plans or schedules as soon as they're solidified will be communicated out to the impacted students and families. Next slide. And now I will pass the mic over to our Chief Engagement Officer, Ms. Latifah Phillips.
Good evening. So we know this has been an incredibly difficult year, and we want to make sure everyone is aware of the McKinney-Vento resources that our district offers. This is for students experiencing homelessness. This act, the McKinney-Vento Act, covers children and youth who don't have a fixed, adequate, and regular nighttime residence. This includes if you're living in a shelter, a motel or hotel, a car, train station. It also is for families who may be living with other people due to loss of housing based on fire or eviction, domestic violence, economic hardship. So if you feel that you may qualify for McKinney-Vento services, please don't hesitate to reach out to your school. You can also call our Family Resource Center and request to speak with our McKinney-Vento specialists. Next slide, please. We want to make sure that everyone is also aware of the pandemic EBT that's available for all students in our school district. Eligible students are students in a fully remote learning situation. So that's all of our students right now. And you will receive $117.20 per month per child. And students attending half day or fully in person are not eligible. Funds for October and November will be issued in one issuance, and the funds will be added to your card on the 25th of each month. So if you don't have your PEBT card, please do reach out to the phone number that we've shared in this presentation. You can also call our central office if you're having trouble getting through to this line. Next slide, please. So we are making efforts to strengthen our communication. It's very important that you keep your contact information updated. That's your phone number and your email. If you've had a change in your phone number, you can submit an online form, which is on our website, or you can contact your child's school to have this information updated. We are sending messages from central office in schools via our connected phone call system. We also send emails. A new feature that was just added is the text message feature. And then we also keep information current on our social media, which is Facebook and Twitter. We are sending all of our central office messages out in the most commonly spoken languages in our district, which are Spanish, Portuguese, Khmer, and Swahili. Messages are sent to families based on the language they indicated at the time of registration. So if you would like information sent to you in a different language, please do reach out and indicate that information to your school. Also, we want you to be aware that any family can call a school or central office, and we have language and interpretation supports available. So if you call the school and you need a language other than English, all of our staff have access to the Lionbridge language interpretation line. And then we are also doing our best to translate key documents. And again, if you've indicated that you want these communications in another language and you're not getting it, please do reach out to your school and let them know so that we can make these corrections. And then lastly, we do have a new website. We have a new newsletter, a district-wide newsletter that we just issued. So please do take a look at that newsletter. Let us know if there are topics that you would like us to cover. And we hope that you will find this as a source of high interest and good news stories about our district. And then also, we're hoping to have regular Zoom community forums like this. So please do give us feedback and let us know how we can make sure we're covering topics that are of interest to you. Next slide, please. So we also have a great partnership with Katie's Closet, and our families have access to clothing and toiletries. We have a closet in our school buildings as well as the Family Resource Center. So please do contact your child's school, social worker, teacher, if you have need for clothing and toiletries, and we can make arrangements to get those to you. And then lastly, we do have extended grab and go meal service. We have 10 sites offered for students taking part in remote learning. Over 1 million meals have been distributed since March, and all students are eligible for the service. They're free of charge. You don't need an ID to pick up the meals. A parent or neighbor can pick up the meals for the students. And on Fridays, students can also pick up meals for the weekend.
All right, so that's the end of the slide deck. I want to go back because this was a popular question before I stop sharing the slides. I want to go back to the slides that show what the date is for when projected return or targeted return, just so that we could go over that again. A lot of people asking what April 1st, to go into April 1st in more detail. I know Dr. Hall answered that in the chat section, but just in case anybody didn't read the answer in the chat, if we could just go over these 3 dates again with all of our viewers.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. Let me try to provide a little bit more insight. So there's right now, as you know, every student is remote. Some of you, your children were in person at different times during the year. So the first 2 dates, February 1 and March 1, that relates to families who were previously in person. So February 1, if your child is in a substantially separate special education program and you were previously in person, these are students who just shifted to remote learning right before the winter vacation. February 1, if the COVID-19 data continues to decline as it's showing right now, and we don't have a surge, February 1 will be the date that your children will return back to school. An important data point for you will be this Thursday. This Thursday is the next COVID-19 update from the Commonwealth. The state releases 2 weeks of data every week. So the previous 2 weeks of data to get that average data that Dr. Hall shared earlier in tonight's presentation. The reason Thursday is important is because that's the date that we're being told that if there is a spike from the Christmas holiday and New Year holiday, we'll see that on this Thursday's data release. So we're going to be looking forward to that. We are on track for that February 1, and we're hopeful that the data continues to trend in that direction. As you heard from Dr. Hall, we're also going to be meeting with the Board of Health. So these decisions are made in consultation with the Board of Health. Through this pandemic, each community is seeing different data. Each community is seeing different levels of risk. So the state has the state guidance suggests that we should work with our local Board of Health, which is what we're doing right now. The local Board of Health has recommended that we're in a remote status for the time being and that we look to February 1. We'll be meeting again with the Board of Health on January 25th. February 1, substantially separate. Then March 1, after we bring back our substantially separate, again, if the data continues to progress, March 1, for those of you that were previously in person that shifted to remote in October based on the data. So if you were not substantially separate special education, you are scheduled for return to in-person learning if your students were previously in person for March 1. April 1 is an expansion beyond that. Now, the important dates to look at here is within the month of February, we're going to be surveying U.S. families and working with our schools to build out those plans for expansion of in-person learning for families that are desiring to be in person. We understand two things. One, some families are going to want to remain remote, and we're going to work with you to support you with remote. And two, the vaccine rollout really matters greatly within the guidance from the state. That vaccine is supposed to start rolling out to educators in the month of February. And as you all have seen, as all of you have seen, and as all of you remember through the opening process, the guidance from the state shifts significantly over the course of time. So February, we'll start surveying you based on the guidance and the rollout of the vaccine. That'll certainly influence and inform our expansion plan for April. And we'll be getting out to you information accordingly as we get closer to those dates. And you will be able to make a choice as a family. And those options will always be based on the local data and the guidance we receive from the Board of Health to ensure that safety remains our top priority. Thank you. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Pulling up some more questions here. So can we talk about the pool testing a little bit more? This was a question in our earlier forum and one that has been asked again tonight. More details about what pool testing is and how it works.
Dr. Hall, can you share a bit more, as much as we know, about the pool testing, the COVID-19 pool testing, Dr. Hall?
Sure, Dr. Boyd. This just got rolled out last week, and we signed up last week, and it's supposed to come out around February 1st, but it involves testing larger numbers of people within buildings by pooling samples, in that approximately 10 people would be tested and their samples would be on a sheet per se, and that would be scanned. And if anyone in the group tested positive, everyone would have to quarantine. If no one in that group tested positive, everyone would obviously be cleared. This allows tests to come back between 24 and 48 hours and allows a lot more people to be treated economically versus other means of testing. We expect more information soon because it will come out on February 1st from the state, but we don't have any more detail as of now.
All right, looking through some more questions. Let's see, so what do we do about students who are disengaged right now and working on engaging them back into engaging them in the process again?
Yeah, Dr. Guillory, can you share a little bit more with the families about how we can support them to re-engage young people in remote learning?
Absolutely. So great question. I think we all recognize that this has been a big adjustment for students, for families, and for teachers. And so the idea here is to reach out, connect with the teacher, connect with the school leader. They can put you in contact with resources like the social worker or guidance counselor, depending on that aspect of the student's needs. So it's really connecting the student with an adult to figure out what's happening with them and how we can better support them. But that adult, that school to home communication or connection is vital in instances like that. So I urge you to immediately give your school a call tomorrow, send them an email tonight so that they can better support you in reconnecting or engaging your child.
Just want to clarify, we have a question, and I think it would be nice to clarify for this family. So when more children are able to go back on campus in school, if you do not want your child to return in person, we just want to assure this family and other families who might have the same question that they'll still have a remote option for the rest of the school year.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, we anticipate for this year that for families that feel that remote learning is the best fit for you, that will continue to be an option for you for this school year. A lot of how we escalate, accelerate, and expand in-person learning will depend on the COVID-19 data, the rollout of the vaccine, and guidance from the state. But we don't anticipate any of that eliminating the option for remote learning for families who find that to be the best fit for them throughout the end of the year. Our goal is to expand in-person learning. We do believe that nothing takes the place of face-to-face instruction for our students, but we also believe wholeheartedly in family choice and partnership with home. And we will be looking to you as families, if that's the choice that you're looking to make, that we'll be looking to support you in that.
Can we have some more information about testing and evaluation specifically for IEP? We have our special education coordinator here, Michael Lovato, and we've gotten some questions about the IEP evaluation process during COVID.
Okay, so Jeffrey, what question is it?
It's looking at, just bounced off the screen as we got more questions. I can't find it at this moment, but it was about, here we go. So does this mean that the testing for kids on an IEP will be held or postponed?
Thank you. No, that's a good question. We still continue to have 13 sites around the community for initial testing and reevaluations as needed. We also have an additional 2 sites for speech and language only students to be tested as well. So it will not slow us down in regards to testing at this point. And we continue to schedule students and accept evaluations as required by both DESE and federal law, and obviously to support our kids within the community.
Thank you. We have a question about the flu shot, obviously different than the COVID vaccine, but can we clarify, if school opens in February, does my child need to have a flu shot to attend? And we can make that applicable to any of the dates for return. So do you need a flu shot in order to come back to school?
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. So first, I want to make sure we can clarify for our community. The flu vaccine doesn't at all change exposure and risk for COVID-19. The reason for the requirement of a flu vaccine was part of the state's rollout in mitigating the commingling of symptoms and eliminating the use of hospitals and services to support flu that wouldn't be then able to be used for COVID-19, as I understand it from what the State Department of Health told us. So that's not a Lowell requirement. That was a part of the state's strategy to make sure we can continue to support our entire community through this health crisis. First, that requirement was the end of December. That was then extended till the end of February. That's currently what we're encouraging, get the flu vaccine, help support and ensure that services and resources can be directed towards people who are experiencing symptoms due to COVID-19 and not perhaps commingling of flu season. We'll continue to update you on that information, but right now it's the end of February. By the time you get to April, we're already at the end of the flu season. The end of February is approximately the end of flu season. So we'll update you on that information. Right now, what we have is that by the end of February to receive it. So there is some time for those of you that are coming back to school on February 1, hopefully, and we'll update you throughout if you're targeted for March 1. By the time you get to beyond that, you're already at the end of flu season, and there really shouldn't be that risk of commingling of symptoms. I hope that's helpful. Now, the way that works, as we're understanding it from the state, is there's a lot of different flexibilities there. So if you have questions about it, or your child typically has flexibility through other immunizations, make sure you're talking with your school nurse, and your school can connect you and talk to those questions individually with you. Also, our Family Resource Center can be of support, and I know that that contact was placed within the chat box. I hope that's helpful, Jeffrey.
Thank you. And I'll just say that phone number out loud, because I know if people are watching on demand and not live, you can't see the chat. The Family Resource Center phone number is 978-674-4321. We had a question about providing support for emotional needs. So I know that we have a big social emotional learning program that's also known as SEL, and we went over that a little bit in the presentation, but I thought it would be good to be able to reiterate some of the SEL work that is being done. This, as it is a very difficult time right now for a lot of our students and families, given the current situation with COVID.
Ms. Desmond, can you share a little bit?
Sure. Thank you, Jeffrey, and Dr. Boyd. So we have provided K-12 social emotional learning curriculum, which we had not had in place before. We had the SEL curriculum in some middle schools and some elementary schools. So this year was the first year that we did a district-wide rollout. So every school has that curriculum. Teachers have also done the DESA evaluation of students. And we've had a few family information sessions. We'll have some more in the future. So once we have that information, Jeffrey, could we post that on the social media sites for families so that they can hear more about the DESA assessment tool?
Absolutely. We could put that on the website, send it out in any form of communication that's appropriate.
Great. Thank you.
I believe we may have touched upon this a little bit, but still getting some questions about the April date. It seems to be one that a lot of people in this forum are anticipating. Will there be a lottery to determine how the students, the increase of students that could possibly return on April 1st? How will that be determined? Which students get to come back on April 1st?
Yeah, thank you. I know there's a lot of excitement about increasing and expanding in-person learning. Certainly, again, our goal is to bring as many kids back to in-person learning as soon as we can, do so safely. Speculating on who's going to be there and how we do that, I'll tell you, we learned through this process that the information changes and shifts so quickly that speculating on that might not even be all that helpful and would probably be premature. What we're going to do and what you can look forward to is that in the early part of February, we'll survey you as families. You'll see that coming out from your schools, surveying you about your intent and desire for in-person learning and what you would be looking for in order to make those decisions. We'll then be updating you and continuing to update you on the status of the vaccine. We'll be working collaboratively with our teachers union around how that works for our teachers to be able to make determinations. And then we'll be communicating out with you the entire step of the way. But right now, what we'll have to do to make sure that we can remain on track is monitor the COVID data and communicate with the Board of Health to hit the February 1 target, which is the students and are substantially separate. They're going to come back the 1st. Then we'll hit March 1 and then to April 1. The time frame and how the vaccine rolls out for educators could and will likely significantly change the guidance and the parameters that are being provided by the state. So we have to see that, and we also need to hear from families about what your desire is. And with family desire, the guidance from the state, then we'll work collaboratively with our teachers union and follow the guidance of our school committee. So there's a lot to yet be determined. We're going to work to bring back as many students as we can, as quickly as we can, to in-person learning, as long as we can do so safely, and we'll make sure that we can update you every step of the way. That's probably as much information as we can give you right now. If you noticed in the timeline that Dr. Hall shared, February to April is a critical time frame for vaccine distribution to educators as well. Right now, phase 1 is underway. Most of us, and likely you know people that are currently within the phase 1 of the vaccine, and they're receiving their vaccinations right now here in Massachusetts. So we're hopeful we'll stick with the phase 2, which includes our educators, and that will significantly change the guidance then from the state that we're all operating under, which will help us provide greater clarity to you about how many students and how students get access to that in-person learning.
We touched upon this in our first forum earlier this afternoon, and I think it was a really good question to go over the idea of the 5% threshold that we had been monitoring with the percent positivity rate. just to fill our listeners in, our viewers in, that we monitor a lot of different COVID data, but among them is the percent positivity rate, the number of tests that are positive here in Lowell. And so right now we're still above 10% in that regard, even though the numbers have been going down the last few weeks. So just to kind of address the idea of the 5% threshold, which was something that we had discussed earlier when making our reopening plan.
Yeah, if you could, perhaps bring back the slide deck and show everybody the link again and how they navigate for the local dashboard. So the 5% that Jeffrey's referring to is during the course of the summer, that was the threshold that was being provided as guidance for whether in-person learning or remote learning was appropriate. Well, we've learned a lot since the summer. And what we've learned is that there is no automatic trigger threshold of a specific data point that applies to everybody universally for whether in-person or remote is the safest decision for a community. Instead, what we've learned and the guidance now is to look at multiple data points that includes the incidence rate, the positivity rate that Dr. Hall mentioned, as well as where the cases are. An example is 2 communities could have the same data points, but one community could have those clustered in nursing homes or prisons, as we've seen across the country, that raises the data within the community, but doesn't really have an impact on the community-wide risk. However, in Lowell, what we experienced was community-wide spread, whereas those those cases were never consolidated at any one particular area. In order to get to that level of understanding, to understand the data points in relation to risk for the community and how that relates to whether we have in-person learning or not, we rely on consultation with health professionals. And the local Board of Health are those health professionals who have been designated within Lowell to help provide that guidance. So that's why we meet with the Lowell Board of Health. So they look at all of these data points, all of the data available, and then as health professionals, they help us to understand the risk and then provide recommendations to us as to whether it's safe as a community to have in-person learning. Because as we've all learned, any one decision that any one person makes has an impact on everyone else. That's how this crisis is spreading and has continued for so long. So the next slide is what I was referring to, Jeffrey, the one that gives the link to, now keep going, the dashboard. There you go. Okay, so I want to make sure. So what we are going to do, many of you have become very accustomed to following the state's dashboard. We now have a dashboard here locally where you can see the data as it relates to our schools. That's important because that data is not has not typically been publicly available, but that's another important data point. So in addition to the positivity rate, also the incident rate, and then how does that relate to numbers or cases of staff and within schools? All of that matters. And then the Board of Health, as the health professionals, interpret that data, translate that data into what the level of risk is here for us. So it's, while it's complex, we do have a process in place to make sure we can make best decisions for the community following the advice of health professionals. And we've learned it's just not a quick trigger, yes or no, based on any one threshold. That would be a lot easier, certainly to understand. And that's what was happening in the summer, but we've learned since then. And now it's a more complicated process, but it is a process that allows us to get to a better decision.
And just to let families know how to get to this website that we were referencing, if you go to the Lowell Public Schools website, you go to the parents and students section, you go to school year information, and you go to the COVID dashboard. Mm-hmm. And that's where you'll be able to reference the information that Dr. Boyd was mentioning.
And I will tell you, I think it's a good opportunity to also say, all of this information is being provided to support you as families and to provide you with access to the information you need to understand not only decisions that are being made, but maybe decisions that you as a family want to make. So if there's any better way to get the information to you or any additional information that would be helpful to you, please don't hesitate to suggest it.
So we are coming up almost at 7 o'clock. This would be the chance for any last minute questions before we start to sign off. Again, you can ask your questions in the chat section or in the Q&A feature. And we thank everybody who has been asking questions thus far.
Yeah, and I also would say, before you head off, again, to say thank you to all of you for joining us. Thank you to our teachers and our staff for all of the work that they're doing to make sure that we can approximate the learning environment. And it really, as I said earlier, this is a test of that partnership between home and school. And I really believe here in Lowell, I have high confidence that the work that's happening here in Lowell, because of all of your work at home, all of your support, all of your flexibility, is putting our children in as good or better an opportunity and environment than other communities that are facing the same. Please do suggest to us, not just questions, but provide us feedback and suggestions. If there's any way that we can get more information out to you, or topics that may be of interest for you for our next community forum. We'll continue to do these as often as is helpful to you, and we want to make sure the topics that we're addressing are topics of interest to you. So thank you, families. Really appreciated having all of you, and really, again, thankful for all that you're doing at home. We know how difficult this is, how much anxiety, how much stress is created during these times. So we'll continue to support you every step of the way.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Thank you, leadership team. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. And we want to especially thank Kim for providing us with the interpretation for ASL.
Thank you again. Have a good night.